Welcome back to another episode of Mind Stigma with myself, Tom Perry.
Me, Alex Emery.
But today we are joined by a special guest, Debbie Wilson, and she's here to tell us a little bit about her story with the struggles of mental health, but from the other side.
Yeah. Debbie, just thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're more than
I
welcome.
know you and Tom have a relationship, for want of better words,
Yeah.
a relationship where you know each other quite. And you've obviously been very open with Tom about your struggles with your partner and what happened there. And obviously, we want you to just highlight what the mental health what happens with mental health on the other side in
Yeah,
relation
sure.
to their partner and stuff that we've covered before. So talk to us about what happened and as best you can to your knowledge and what you want to share with us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So 8 years ago, last Monday, my husband come home from work, um, and left the house an hour later and never came back. So as you can imagine, was traumatic. Police knocking on the door saying that they'd found his body. And unfortunately, he took his life by the friars at Alsford. Yeah, and had hung himself. So, as you can imagine, total complete shock. Knew Kim suffered a bit of depression. He did have addictions, alcohol. Um, he was addicted to cannabis, and he was bulimic as well. So he had all them three things that really did affect him through his life. So as you can imagine, was
Complicated
yeah
issues.
very complicated for him. Yeah, but he just kept it to himself. He was a secret drinker. Bulimia I knew about. Yeah, but it was just difficult, as you can
Yeah, of
imagine, for me
course.
and my kids and that. And unfortunately, after a long battle, he didn't want to, and he stopped drinking. And unfortunately, yeah, he took his life. Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, and for Tom, I know Tom can resonate with probably potentially some of what your husband thought about,
yeah,
or how he got to that place. And
mm,
like I've said in this podcast before, it's not something that I've
mm,
personally wanted to do, but I can understand how people get there. But from your point, then, so you said obviously you suffered with a few different ailments and
yeah,
bug and
addictions. Yeah,
addictions for a
yeah,
long time.
yeah.
What did you know about his mental health? Like, so what is it? Did you have any
Mm.
inkling about what was going on? Was it just
I
something that you
think,
thought about?
yeah, to be honest, Kim was of that generation as well.
Mm,
He was flat roofer in the building game, come home from work, going to the pub, couple of pints with his mates, and that was just a norm really from when we got married.
yeah,
So he lost his mum when he was 14, so that was like a real sort of trigger for him, and I know that did affect him big time.
right,
He grew up in a big family, but not with a very tight network, and none of his siblings knew that he had such a issue with alcohol, cannabis, and was even bulimic. So that was a bit of a shock to them. So on the outside, he was just like always smiling, but
yeah,
but he was also the subdued one. So if he was out in the pub with all our friends, he'd be the subdued one in the corner,
okay,
and wasn't like loud or anything. But that was just the way he controlled himself. He loved his music, so he'd sit at home just with his earphones in and listening to music. So I think he was just always deep in thought.
yeah.
So it
He's
was,
such as
yeah,
he was in like a real male oriented environment, right? Being that it was a
yeah,
trading group.
definitely.
Um, you know, being from that generation as well, where at least plus sort of a few years on us in the
Mm,
sense that he would have been around other people that really didn't want to open up.
yeah, yeah,
That's something that he probably felt
yeah,
that must have
yeah,
been really difficult for him
yeah.
because I find it uh, reasonably easy to talk about my mental
Mm,
health. That's me personally,
mm.
but I also don't think I'm the era group that I'm in at the minute. It's acceptable
Yeah,
to talk
no.
about. So
But I think you're more the era that
mm,
have started
the
talking.
change, yeah,
8 years ago, I never knew anybody that had took their life. And it was only since Kim died that I started talking to people, and I always talk about it. I never sort of keep it inside, because the more we shout about it, the more people like you guys will start talking.
Yeah.
So I'm not ashamed of it. I was ashamed when he first died. I felt like I had this stigma over me. Her husband took his life.
I suppose
Uh,
you would felt like you failed in a way.
yeah, absolutely. And the emotions you go through is unreal. And, happy to talk about anything, as time goes on with you guys, because it's such a big subject, the aftermath of suicide, from the day it happens to like 8 years on now, the stories, what I've had to go through, and what my kids, his friends have had to go through, his family. It's just the aftermath is just huge, you know.
That's
Um,
something for me that stops me from contemplating
yeah,
suicide at all. And we
definitely.
spoke about it before. There's something that I've said to Tom and in the group is the only thing that stops me is the thought of anyone else having to be in any other pain than they
Yeah,
have to be.
no.
I mean, like I said, suicide is probably the least selfish thing that someone could do for themselves
Mm,
because that's their amount of pain. Like
yeah,
that whole broken leg that we spoke
definitely.
about before.
Yeah,
But for everyone else, it could be the most selfish thing you
yeah,
do.
yeah,
But it's so hard to voice that
yeah.
without
I
sounding
think,
Yeah.
like you're being
yeah,
hypocritical.
absolutely. And I think from my point of view, when people say, "Oh, that's he was selfish," I don't think he was selfish. He's lost his life.
Yeah,
He's given us a lot of pain. Don't get me wrong, but he's at peace now because he was ill, and
yeah,
and he was ill, but just would never go and get help. And I think, as we say, go back to 8 years ago, there wasn't, people didn't go and get help. They didn't go to the doctors. They didn't talk to their mates in the pub. And Kim never did, and he never spoke to me or the family about how he was feeling. Um, and now, thank
yeah,
God that it is out in the open, and guys like
yeah.
you and hopefully me can bring this, to everybody's attention and just talk,
Changes are
you know?
happening now.
Yeah,
I do think it's changing. So from 8 years ago, and that it was. I mean, even when I was younger, we weren't spoke about. I
no,
mean, when
not
I
at
had my
all.
first attempt when I was 16,
Yeah,
nobody spoke about it.
no,
If anybody
no,
mentioned the word mental health, people thought about people in penny cells, and
absolutely.
the white
Yeah,
jackets and
yeah,
straight jackets.
yeah, yeah.
It has changed over years, and it is
Mm,
changing.
mm,
There is still a stigma, and there is still people who struggle to talk about it. But there's obviously people going out there who are openly talking about it, like we are,
yeah,
which helps
definitely.
other people come forward. And this is obviously the platform why we do this as well. Another reason to help people
Yeah,
come forward, getting people like yourselves who's been on the other
yeah,
side of it. I mean, I've been
yeah,
on the side where your husband's been, not to the point obviously where I've got
yeah,
obviously the end result with so your husband obviously, but
mm,
I've been on that side of it as well, and so
mm,
it's kind of it's nice to see someone else's perspective from that side.
yeah,
Because I think of my wife, talking to you, I think of
yeah,
my wife. I think of
absolutely.
my, my wife could be where you're sitting,
Yeah,
That
talking
was
about me,
absolutely,
you know. And
absolutely.
but so I think
Yeah,
that, and then that kind of like makes that kind of reins it in a bit for me, and that
mm,
kind of grounds me a bit.
yeah,
And that's something that I'll probably use as a
mm,
grounding technique if I ever get into
yeah,
a situation like that again.
That's what
definitely.
I was
I
going to
can
Yeah,
ask
use
you.
that,
Yeah,
you know.
because obviously it's such a. I mean, it's like the best tool, isn't it? That when you hear someone's reaction to them, the end product of what
yeah,
happened. Unfortunately, your husband took his life for his own reasons,
yeah,
and you've been in a position that you feel like that, and you've attempted that. What does that make you feel like, Tom? Like, what does it make you feel? Like, what does that, before you think about your personal relationship that you know each other, what did that make you feel instantly when you found out that information? What does that make you feel about your actions or your intentions and what your wife like? And what does that make you feel
Well, I
like?
mean, like, just talking to Debbie and hearing how you tell the impact it's had on her,
Yeah,
losing her husband and all that. And like I said, I revert back to my wife. So I'm thinking of Georgie sitting there,
yeah,
being in that
mm,
same
yeah,
situation Debbie's, and
mm,
her being like 8 years on and me not being here, and
mm,
and I could see how much impact it had on Debbie,
mm.
and
And you've got children as well.
yeah, it's
yeah,
the thing now.
Your children,
I've got
like
young children as well, so
what
yeah.
my children have gone through as
That's
well, being a bit older,
yeah.
but they've still had to go through
That's a
hell,
really good point
unfortunately.
because
Yeah,
that's what we was talking about beforehand. Is that what is the impact on children in a situation. If you're in a relationship, clearly been in a relationship for a long time, you was with your husband for a long time, you know, you've been with your missus for a long time, and you know, you're on the other side of it. You know, you've got the younger kids, now your kids are older, and this happened at an older age for them, wasn't it? It was a bit older.
Yeah, Poppy was about 19, Joe 21, and Louis about 25.
You know, so
Yeah,
quite big ages, and you
yeah,
know, puberty's gone through, hit big, you know, big changes in life, leaving school, moving into colleges, university, big, you know, first proper jobs potentially. So these are big moves
yeah,
as well. And then on that other side of it, you've got, you know, starting off learning the small stuff, you know, really breaking through into school, building
yeah,
relationships, you know, characteristics of themselves that are going to move on. And what's that impact had after obviously Kim died and took his life? What impact has that had on your relationship with your kids or your kids' relationship with you? What does that look
yeah.
like now?
We are so close, it's unreal. I think, Poppy and Joe, my younger two, I wouldn't say affected more, but mentally, Poppy had just got into uni at Canterbury College to do social care degree,
Yeah,
to start in September, and he died in the August. Of course, she went, and social care, you can imagine things we're talking
yeah,
about addiction and suicide, and so unfortunately she couldn't carry on. And from that point, Poppy's really struggled
yeah,
over the last 8 years to find herself. She's a musician, she's a poet, she's so intelligent, and so she's just got into Aberystwyth Uni to do creative writing. And she's in a I'll never say my kids are in a good place because they never will be, but she's in a better place. She's got married, and she deals with it. But
yeah,
like yourself, she suffers with the anxiety and all the things that you guys suffer with, but being a lady, but still suffers with the same.
yeah.
You know?
It's poignant
Yeah,
that he was talking about earlier about like you know the women's side of things as well. Obviously, Tom being a massive advocate for men's mental health, and
yeah,
obviously this podcast as well, and you know generally just you know mental health and different spectrums, but. It's so funny because we was talking about at the beginning that women have always been put in this place where they've said that they can communicate better. You know, women go out for coffee and
yeah.
socialise, and
Women
but
rule the world.
yeah, women rule the world.
We're all about
But who, like we
that,
said earlier, who goes into work, even
Yeah,
a room full of women, and as a woman, strong woman, you're not
mm,
going to then just show some of your
no,
weaknesses or
no,
what
yeah.
society classes a weakness. You
Because
know,
some women are ashamed of what is going on indoors as well, aren't they? Do you know
of
what I mean?
course,
They don't want to talk about it,
and
so you've got that side of the mental
yeah,
health as well. And from my point of view, sitting here today with you guys talking about suicide, there's so many aspects of suicide that I want to talk about later on, about
mm,
the effects it's had on me and my family,
yeah, of
Kim's
course,
friends, and everybody. And what I want to do moving forward in working with Tom is support people like me and people and women
mm,
and mums like your mum, Alex,
yeah,
that has to deal with her son having mental health issues. How's that impacting her? And have a group that we can all sit and talk together,
yeah.
because that is so important
It's,
as well.
it's about building that community
Yeah,
that
definitely.
allows for like a
Yeah,
safety net as
yeah,
well and shows
yeah,
the normality of what
yeah,
people go through.
yeah,
Because what you went through isn't abnormal anymore. Like Tom was saying earlier, um, there's not many people that knew someone that had taken their life years ago.
no,
Like there wasn't, you know,
absolutely.
you wouldn't hear it very, and when
No,
you did, it was horrific,
yeah,
and you're like, oh my god, that's.
yeah,
But now it's
mm,
like it's almost in the top 10 of things that people will
yeah,
potentially die of.
definitely.
And when, like I said the
Mm.
other day, one of the biggest killer of men at the moment is male
Absolutely.
suicide.
Yeah.
That's mental. You
No,
know, that is like for want of better
definitely.
words, mental.
Yeah.
So for me, like it's a poignant point that got to talk about the fact that it isn't just men. Women have been allowed to have a better platform because they've opened up. They
Yeah.
personally have opened up,
Yeah.
whereas men didn't. We've always had a platform, but we just
Mm.
didn't want to engage in it. So,
Mm.
like, what the
Mm.
one thing that I personally want to know more about from your side of things. Obviously, you said your husband Kim that had addictions. You know,
Mhm.
obviously he had that addictive personality around different substances and bits and bobs. But what was it? So it was cannabis and then alcohol.
Alcohol, and he was bulimic as well.
And he was really
Yeah.
okay.
But I must say,
Yeah.
he was a beautiful man.
Mm,
He was beautiful, inside and out. He was so caring. he would just do anything for anybody. He was a great dad, but he just was ill, and I don't want to sit here and portray a bad, you know, saying bad about him because he wasn't, but unfortunately he had these illnesses, and bless him, he didn't have his mum from the age of 14. He didn't have that good care. And I know a lot of people do have, but still have issues.
Yeah.
But he just struggled, you know. Um,
But this is really, that's just a massive point, isn't it,
Yeah.
Tom? Is that you could be the best dad, you can be best at your job, you can be best at anything in life, you could be absolutely rocking life.
Yeah. We
Doesn't
had a good
mean
life,
yeah.
My job had progressed. He earned good money, I earned good money. 3 amazing kids.
You had it all on paper, right? You had it all on paper, yeah.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you saying that, I mean, I remember when I first started this a couple of years ago. I had a bloke approach me, and somebody I knew for quite some time. We used to go to school and that with him. He approached me and he said, Tom, he said, the thing is, he said, I've got everything you could possibly imagine. I mean, he was a multi-millionaire. He got a big business in London. He got a nice house, beautiful wife, everything. And he said, I've got everything you could imagine. I know I want for nothing. He said, but I feel like I've got nothing. He said, I feel like I've got nothing. And he was in a really bad place. And, he said to me, he went, I've got all this stuff, all this material stuff, but it doesn't make me happy.
Yeah.
And it goes show you that, like, it does go show you, no matter where you are in that food chain,
No.
if if you're going to be affected by it, you're going to be affected by it,
So true.
and
What is it then? You had he had a good life. His memory clearly lives on through your kids and massive amount of work that they're doing to better themselves and make themselves into great individuals, which they clearly will do. But what is it that you saw in his addictions that you think potentially might have made that worse, if any? Was there something that you thought, because you spoke earlier about that it wasn't quite clear that addictive qualities were there when you first met, but probably was underlying. What, if any, was there any that really for you went, that's probably what made this situation a million times worse, or none of the above? So drugs, drink, is there one thing you could pin it and say that made this situation for him probably that's why he got to where he got to, or not at all?
It's hard because I mean we had lots of conversations about his addictions.
Mm.
Um, our life was very personal. I wasn't one to go. I talked to my best friend about things like you do.
Mhm.
Kim would never ever talk to anybody about his
Really?
situation. No, not even his best friends. So I think everything was always kept inside with him. So it made it difficult to know sort of how he was feeling at any possible time.
Yeah.
You know. So ask me that question again because I've
Yeah.
lost the plot now.
That's
it happened like
that
that.
leads,
I do
no,
apologise.
I was so mesmerized by what you were saying as well,
Yeah,
but also I just think my main point really, because I've worked with lads, lasses that are dealing with addiction still
yeah,
already, and we've had partners come in to speak to us that are in
yeah,
absolute tatters about the whole situation, and they say, do you reckon that is the one thing that's making them
yeah.
feel down or depressed? And I'm like, don't think you can quite pin it on one thing.
No, and I don't think you could pin it on Kim really because I think
No.
it just over the years, Um, but the one thing he would never stop drinking. And we had conversations the Wednesday before he took his life on a Friday,
Mm.
which is very personal, but I'm happy to open up and talk about it.
Yeah.
We had a long discussion about his drinking, and I'd said to him that I can't live like this no more because he, we didn't have a social life really. My friends would go out, I didn't go out, he wouldn't go out. My kids had all got older, were going out doing their own thing, and we was at home. And when we did go out, because he'd been drinking before he went out, he didn't want to stay out. So it had a big impact on our life.
It ruined that social
Yeah,
aspect of
it did.
drinking for, well,
And
just being out, wasn't it?
yeah, and this is then you start putting blame on yourself because I did say to him that night, but you've got to choose. You have to make a choice. Unfortunately, and that night I was in tears, he was in tears, and we both. He just said to me, Debbie, you won't like it, but I'm never going to stop drinking. And I just said, but then I can't live like this.
Yeah.
And that's being very open and honest with you. And we went to bed that evening. he stroked my face
Mm.
and just said to me, I'll always love you. And you've always been here for me, and I know what I've got to do. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, he knows what he's got to do. So there's me thinking he's going to
Maybe you
like stop
switched onto
drinking,
it.
you know,
Yeah.
thinking, right, okay, this is the time I'm going to stop drinking. And then 2 days later, he took his life.
That's
Yeah.
powerful.
And I think that is what he had to do, was to let us live our lives, and
Yeah.
he had
That's
to sacrifice his.
yeah.
And that's my only way that I can sort of
Yeah.
deal
So
with what happened.
it's like that's. I mean, that's addiction at its worst. Is that the one, like I said, the one person you spend your whole life with, that
Yeah,
you operate around, you have kids with,
yeah,
you go through the most
yeah,
intimate situations with,
mm,
but won't do one thing to
yeah,
help themselves
yeah,
or your
yeah,
relation or the relationship. And I think
mm,
it's a selfish thing, addiction. It really takes away the quality of the individual.
mm,
He was an amazing guy by all accounts, and like you said, a beautiful man,
absolutely,
fantastic
yeah,
individual, and
yeah. And we were so in love.
yeah,
We would still sit
yeah,
indoors. He'd be in his chair, I'd be on the sofa, and we'd hold hands.
yeah.
We'd walk up the street holding hands, and our friend June would walk past and she'd say, I miss you and Kim walking up the road holding hands.
Yeah,
But that's how he was, you
it's
know?
just it's sad because when I see some of the lads that I work with and some people that have passed through the doors that have
Mm,
addiction, it cripples so many people to a
yeah,
point where they're great. They're like absolutely some of the best soldiers that I've ever seen with the best work history in relation to being a soldier. Um, but just crippled by
yeah,
trying to stop drinking alcohol. And when you say to them, we're going to pop down to Change Grow Live
mm,
in Maidstone, and I'm going to go down there with you.
yeah,
Not holding your hand, but I'll go down with you,
mm,
support you. It's just a chat. They crumble. It's
yeah,
like you've put them in front of a tank and you
mm,
said, now battle it. It's
mm,
like it's the worst case scenario. And a lot of them say, I'm never going to stop.
yeah,
I literally will never stop. And, I just, I feel like, I don't think that one conversation that clearly you had with your husband was the be
no,
all and end all, because
yeah,
he clearly has been in a bad
mm,
place for a long time. But I know what you was trying to say a minute ago. It's like maybe he thought that was the remedy to the
yeah,
situation, and that's he's not going to stop drinking, but he could stop,
mm,
I
everything
mean,
else.
yeah,
put the drugs aside
Mm,
for a minute and just look at the individual being in that frame of
mm,
mind. You know, I can imagine it. I've been, like I say, I've been in that similar situation where I've been nearly there where Kim was. And you do think the best outcome is for your family to be without you.
yeah,
So
mm,
you do think that like, they will get on better without you. They'll
mm,
get on, you know, it's proof of the pudding here with Debbie that it's not like, it's not plain sailing. It's in,
doesn't make it all
it
better.
doesn't make
No.
it better. But
yeah,
obviously, Kim was in that frame of mind where he thought it was going to, and he was adamant in his mind that is what's got to be done. And
Yeah.
and so and obviously, and he chose that path, and because he thought it was for the best. But
mm,
and
Just it's shocking though. It's shocking from that someone. It's shocking that, like, just taken away from being anything personal. It's shocking that an individual, so like, that one of the smallest parts of your body takes over your whole body that much that you're willing
mm,
to take away your own life to benefit, to try to personally feel like it benefits other
yeah,
people. And that to me is still one of the biggest reasons why one, I do this, and two, I do
yeah,
what I do, because I
yeah,
think more people have to help these people. Like, regardless of whatever that
mm,
help looks like, you have to do something, because if you've felt the effects of it yourself and you say,
mm,
you want to implement something that helps women and women amongst the men in our group and
yeah,
outside of that. I think that's what people have got to do to change this whole stigma and our relationship with mental health.
mm,
Because otherwise, you just have people like that, blokes that work all their lives, graft, have kids, have a great marriage, happy. But actually, underlining all that, they can't do the one thing, which is
mm,
have a conversation.
yeah,
yeah.
Actually
absolutely.
talk about what they're feeling and go,
Yeah,
I don't mind having some help
yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
open enough to talk about it.
I mean,
mm,
It's sad.
I mean, a little while back, somebody said to me, I was talking about this, someone about my situation that I was in a few months ago, and they turned around and said, "Do you, do you not love your wife enough to stay, to want to stay?" And I said, "The thing is, not about loving your wife.
Mm.
Sometimes you love them too much where you think that is the
Yeah,
best option.
exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
what I'm picturing myself being in
Yeah.
Kim's situation.
Mm.
And I can imagine the love for you and for his
Mm.
kids was so great that he thought that was
Yeah.
his only.
Yeah.
And, and obviously you've got to kind of like see it from the other point of view as well, his point of view,
Mm.
on how he must have been feeling for that, and it's got to be so hard. It's
Yeah.
got to be
Yeah.
so hard to be in that frame of mind.
Yeah. After I lost Kim, I built a really good, sounds bizarre, relationship with the funeral director, Joe,
Yeah.
and the coroner.
That's
And
morbid, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
it is
morbid.
very
Yeah,
morbid,
it's morbid.
but I did. Um, and the coroner, he said to me, he lost his friend to suicide, and he went to a group with loads of
Yeah.
men who had attempted suicide but hadn't succeeded. And he said that every guy in that room individually said to him, his why did you do that,
Mm.
and they all said because we thought our family or our wives or whatever would be better without us, and they all said exactly the same thing, and I think
So
that's
sad.
what
Mm.
Kim thought as well.
Because
But
that's so much love.
yeah,
I think that
yeah,
actually, it's hard to say because you don't want to say it and glorify it and make it.
no,
But I also get it because when you're in love with someone or at that in love with your family
mm,
and your friends, and you respect them enough that you know that the pain that you're putting them through, to
mm,
imagine then having to end that, like, I mean,
yeah,
I almost applaud people for being that strong. Meant like to be able to go to
mm,
it's such a weird mixed emotions for me because I don't really know whether they've done something
mm,
that's amazing in the sense that it takes them to a really good place for them,
yeah,
right? So I think that's great for them,
mm,
but for everyone else,
yeah,
which who they thought they were doing the best thing for, it is the
yeah.
worst situation.
So that's why I'm sitting here with you guys
Yeah,
today, really, so people can listen to and
the
think
other side
about
of
the
it.
other side of it,
Yeah,
because Kim was struggling with mental health, absolutely,
yeah,
but now I do a bit,
yeah,
not madly, because I don't know, I'm lucky, I'm quite a strong person, but my children do,
yeah,
which is going to affect, I've got two grandchildren, 7, 9 years old. When the day comes when we have to tell them what actually happened to their granddad, because
yeah,
Lily thinks that he's hurt his leg and gone to heaven, you know.
yeah.
So it just
It's the knock-on effect, and I mean
yeah,
that's the
exactly.
biggest point, isn't it,
Yeah.
about this
Mm,
particular podcast today for me is that hopefully anyone that's sitting the other side of this is going, you know what, I've heard what Debbie's had to say, I've heard what
yeah.
that Tom's had to say. It's not about making an informed decision. I don't want anyone to be sitting the other side and
Mm,
going, well, now I've got all the coins and I've split them across and I've made them.
yeah.
It's not about that. It's actually going, just stop a minute, take on board what both these people are saying, that they're both good points. But the point is actually, have you exhausted all options
Yeah.
first? Have you looked at the support you might be able to get, the lowest level support, that conversation with your partner, your friends, your family, the close people first, then start looking at all the other options, medication,
Yeah.
start ticking the boxes first. Not to say once you've ticked all the boxes, green light, but really think about what you're doing and the actions because, like, well, proof's in the pudding, isn't it? You're sitting there, very strong woman for coming on and saying that, but you shouldn't be in that
Thank
position.
you.
You
Yeah,
shouldn't be in that
No,
position.
no.
But it's probably, mate, like you said earlier, and like I said, the only way to get stronger in life is to overcome real hardship and bad situations.
Mm,
You should never have gone through that situation, but you have, and
mm,
now your kids will probably be a million times stronger for it.
yeah.
You will be a million
Yeah.
times stronger for it,
Yeah.
and that's an almost positive legacy that your husband's then passed on
Mm,
is to show that mental health
yeah.
is massive and it
Mm,
needs looking at. It
yeah.
needs people like us, people like yourself, coming forward to talk openly about it. Because
Mm,
otherwise, we'll have more
mm,
situations where we have
yeah.
wives sitting there,
Yeah.
or husbands sitting
Mm,
there, or mums
mm,
and fathers
mm.
sitting there going, actually, they didn't speak about
Mm.
it.
I think I said right from the start when Kim died, I just, once I'd got my head around what had actually happened,
Mm.
because for weeks and months it was like I was like in a dream. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
just couldn't believe it. But I always said that I didn't want his death to be in vain, and if I can do something to help just one person not take their life, the same as you guys sitting here,
yeah.
then we've achieved something.
Oh,
But,
yeah, exactly. Fantastic.
and that's why everybody's just got to talk and be open and honest. And it's not weak to talk.
I mean, if you could say one thing today, like about somebody who might be in that situation, what would you say? What would you say to them?
If Kim knew the devastation that he was caused after taking his life, I truly believe he wouldn't have done it. I truly believe that. But I think from Kim's point of view, and all them years ago,
Mm.
he knew nobody that had been in that situation I knew of. So he didn't know what the aftermath was going to be. And
Yeah.
that's what I'd say.
It's, I mean,
Powerful, isn't it? Very powerful.
yeah, I don't even know how you'd summarize it because it's, it's so difficult. I mean, something that I wanted to ask actually and speak about was what reception did you get from everyone else about what Kim did, and what did you get like what sort of reaction did you get from people? Because when you were talking about people that end up with a bereavement, and their partner passes away, you get
Mm,
time off work, blah blah blah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it really hard.
Mm.
But what did you get? What reception did you get from people? Like, did they know how to tackle this? Like,
To be honest, it was just so difficult because 2 days after we had the press on the door. It was in the Kent Messenger. It was because he'd done it on local land, local people had to vote. So we had all that on top of everything as well. But
yeah,
family and friends, and we was both born in Eccles. We
yeah,
both grew up in the village. We got married when I was 25 years, 27. So everybody knew us. So I was blessed with so many good people around me, but so many people that were just absolutely devastated and shocked because Kim, like myself, knew everybody in the village. He knew so many people around. There was 500 people at his funeral. Everybody was great. Um, yeah, and I was blessed, and my kids were blessed that we had so much love around us, and we still have.
you
You know,
imagine you now. I imagine for I don't know, Tom, so you grew up in the area that you did. You grow up in the area?
Yeah, yeah. I
You
grew up
wasn't it? Yeah.
around
So
Southern East Morning and that. Yeah, so
yeah. So I mean, it's potentially easier because you've got people that you can relate to that you kind of know, so you can release a little bit of that pain a little bit
yeah,
easier and quicker.
yeah,
But I think for some people, and the people that I know that I've kind of met along the way, is that the communication that they get from their partner committing suicide, whether it be male or female, is it's just this whole they're selfish
yeah,
conversation. And I think
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
damaging for
yeah,
the partner
yeah.
because then you build up it must build up a hatred towards a person
mm,
that you love potentially, or a
mm.
real not there's no understanding of what happened.
I
So
suppose I've never seen it as
yeah,
a selfish act, and I don't think my children have either, and
yeah,
his
Mm.
friends. I think his friends were like more shocked because they didn't know about all his addictions.
yeah,
But I've never seen it as a selfish act.
no.
Don't get me wrong. When I get up there, God help him.
He's gonna get a
But
shoe in, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool, but I've never seen it as selfish. I've seen it as brave,
It
and
is
that he
brave.
done it
Yeah.
for me, my kids,
So I mean, the
in a
words,
mad way.
yeah, the
Yeah,
mads of
yeah,
it is mad because the words around it are brave and strong, and being as that it causes so many issues. I mean, it almost isn't them things, but it is because, like I said, that person's in so much
yeah.
pain. The one person you love the most, you didn't want to see him in that pain anyway. You would
Mm.
have done absolutely anything as well, and I'd guarantee it. Whether it be medication, like I said, the broken leg thing, you would have paid for
Yeah,
every ounce of physio if you knew that it
exactly.
was going to get him.
Yeah,
Like, and there isn't that out there. There's not. There is talking therapies. There are all these different organisations, which is fantastic, but if you don't open up and you haven't shown wanting and you haven't been found at all,
yeah,
you just go under the wayside,
You
absolutely.
and
go
you
under
don't walk
right
around with a broken leg. You
under the
go to
radar.
A&E
Yeah.
and you get strapped up,
Exactly.
doesn't it?
It's
So
visible.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
visible.
yeah. And I suppose, and I said with Kim, he always had it. If you spoke to anybody, always had
Mm,
a smile on his face.
yeah,
You know,
which is it.
always.
Which almost makes it worse
Yeah,
because you'd rather
Yeah.
someone
yeah,
be this miserable person
yeah.
because then it would make sense, wouldn't it? Which
Absolutely.
is awful to
Yeah,
say, but it would make sense. But it just never is the case. And I think that's one of the pointing things is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to
no,
male suicide
Yeah.
or
not at all.
generally anyone that commits suicide. There isn't one size fits all. There are some real poignant points that you
Yeah,
made, and I think that's something that we will touch on throughout the time. But for me, it was the addictions and stuff like that. Being as that's what I work with a lot of the time. That for
Yeah.
me is quite
Yeah,
poignant
sure.
because hopefully the lads, some
Mm.
of my lads that are here and lads that I work with will
Yeah.
watch this and see that
Mm.
the effect that that can also have,
Yeah.
you know.
I think on the other side as well, Kim and I, throughout the last few years, we had discussions about his drinking, and he did try to stop a couple of times, but unfortunately that, sort of slipped back into it.
Yeah.
But he would say to me that he hates himself. He hated himself. He hated himself for drinking. He hated himself, you know.
Mm.
So, and that was hard to think that he hated himself.
He
But
would,
that was
yeah. She loved one, isn't it? Yeah, she
exactly,
loved one.
yeah, and it was hard. But the
Mm.
only person that could help himself
It's him,
was
yeah.
was him,
It
and that
is.
was the thing. I could be there
Yeah,
and anything, give him advice or support, but
yeah.
that
I
was
think, I think
quite difficult.
it is difficult because with addiction, you don't like you as much as you want to um, potentially deal with the problem at hand. Like personally, you just can't because it's personal to that individual. It's like saying to someone you need to go to the doctor because you've got mental
Yeah,
health. Like it's not as simple as that. Person has to acknowledge it first. So acknowledgement is like really difficult. And like I said, it took me quite a long time to really come out to anyone else about how I felt about my mental health. But it was needed. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And I think now that I've done that, I can see why it's so important.
yeah,
Having someone on like yourself and what you've gone through is important because of spreading that awareness around, your family and friends, what that looks like to them and how, what that affects could look like. So yeah,
yeah, definitely.
definitely. But
No, it's been quite a chat today.
Good.
We've seen, well, we've heard, the other side of the story in that as well, and
I think definitely need to get you to come back on again
Absolutely.
because there's
Yeah.
some real individual points that are really poignant.
Mm.
But it's been a real heavy. I mean, for me, it empowered. I think hopefully it empowered you. I hope
Yeah.
it empowered you to feel like his story,
mm,
his life
Mm.
didn't go. It wasn't in vain.
Yeah.
What he done um, was for
Mm.
him to feel at ease and at rest. And
Mm.
unfortunately, it causes so many issues. But your story will hopefully
Yeah.
help other people
Well,
come forward.
that's why I'm here,
Yeah,
supporting you guys and supporting anybody out there that just needs the help. Just reach out to somebody.
yeah,
that's
definitely.
great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all we've got time for today, Debbie. But thank you for coming on,
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
and it's been a great chat, and hopefully we'll get you
Pleasure.
back on again.
yeah,
Definitely.
fantastic. Remember, like, subscribe, follow, get on the Instagram, get on Facebook, the Men's Mind Project. Make sure you get on Mind the Stigma Instagram and get on YouTube. And we'll see you later. Thank you very much, Debbie. Cheers.
Very